Good morning.
Pallavi.
Yes.
Pallavi, can you tell us something about yourself?
Yes, sir. So my name is Pallavi Sunkar. I am from Jabalpur, Madhya Pradesh. I have graduated in law from National Law University, Bhopal. Thereafter, I have worked as a judicial magistrate in the MP judiciary. I quit my job in 2020 and I'm here now.
So tell me, what's your plan B? Supposing it's a matter of luck. You take the exam and you don't get through. Will you get do you have a lien on your judicial job? Will you get it back?
No, sir. I won't get that
You won't
back.
get it back. So what is your plan B?
So I may gander another attempt at this paper. If it doesn't work out then I have two options that I'm looking at. First is to get into litigation, which is another way to help people out. And the other would be to get into teaching. And for that, I would first have to go through an LLM and hopefully get into teaching.
Okay, that's the plan B.
Yes.
So, but what was what made you give up your judicial job, which is quite an excellent job and one of the topmost preferred jobs in the country?
Yes, sir.
And going for the civil services?
Yes, sir. The major reason for quitting the job was because I wanted to broaden my horizons a little and I wanted to get into a more direct approach. With the judiciary, you're limited to interpreting the law and applying them to the facts and circumstances of the cases that are brought before you. But in the civil services, you get a lot of diverse roles and responsibility, and you get the element of being a little more proactive, and the impact that you make is on a larger society. And that was the thing that basically called to me.
Okay, I see your first preference is the foreign service.
Yes, sir.
How do you propose to make an impact on the Indian this thing that public by joining the foreign service? I mean, what you said makes more sense if you join the civil IAS or the IPS, but
I understand, sir. I think with the IFS, the idea is that when you're projecting the interests of our country worldwide, you're also making other countries look at us, and that brings more opportunities for here. For example, if we are able to negotiate a good trade deal, that will benefit the people at large. So maybe as a DM, my impact is to one district, but if I'm able to do good job as a IFS, that will bring a pan-India impact. I think that is something that I'm excited about.
Okay, so now since you got a judicial background, can you tell me something about recently launched IT rules?
Sir, IT rules were with the Code of Ethics rules for media intermediaries, social media intermediaries, and also for the OTT platforms. Those they were catered towards that. The rules for the OTT platforms were focused on self-regulation, sort of, so that there were no per se censorship rules on them. And the social media intermediaries were also and the other part of the rules was the social media intermediaries, who were asked to maintain a level of heed to the regulations and rules of the country. And as such, if their platform was used for anything adverse, they would have to come in place. So it was mostly regulation-based rules.
What is the crux of these rules as far as social media, websites, all these platforms are concerned? What is the crux? Tell me as a layman, make me understand as a layman, what is the crux?
Sir, the crux was to aim for a self-regulatory body in that regard, so that the government wouldn't have to get into regulating them. The idea was also to maintain a peaceful experience over the social media, to reduce infractions as such that happen on social media and the use of it to propagate hate speech, etc. So it was catered more towards those ideas.
Is there something fixing liability here?
That is the crux. In a way.
The crux is that.
Yes, sir.
What is that?
Thank you, sir. Sir, the idea was that the aim, it was put on them to regulate their own platform so that the government wouldn't have to go in. So it gave them a little bit of responsibility over what was happening in their own platforms. And that was the idea behind it, so in my opinion, sir.
A little more specific.
Sir, I cannot think of anything. I'm sorry.
See, it made those websites and social media platforms liable for any act. Right now, they are not liable.
Yes.
Somebody posts, demeaning picture or something of somebody, they can simply say, "Oh, I can't do anything about it. He's posted it." But after the rules come into force, if he does not shut it down or remove it within 72 hours, he is as liable as that third party who posted the picture. That is
Yes,
the
sir.
crux of the old rules.
Yes.
You make them liable for punishment.
Yes,
under the
sir.
Act.
Thank you for
Under the
enlightening me,
Act,
sir.
yeah.
Thank you, sir.
So, Pallavi, since Foreign Service is your first choice,
Yes, ma'am.
tell me something about India's journey in the last 75 years, foreign policy journey. What has there been continuity in change, or has it been completely, there have been, what do you see the last 75 years of India's foreign policy?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Our foreign policies has been evolving with the times of the world. As we grew, our foreign policy has changed with regard to what we view as important, what we want to project into the world. So that is the main theme behind the evolution of our this thing.
Any turning or any sort of points at which you saw there was some change or none?
Yes, ma'am. Until the 60s, 70s, there was a phase of the policy where we were looking at NAM as a non-alignment movement, etc. We were approaching, going for an idealistic way of approaching. Thereafter came, I would say, came an era of realism, where we were able to see what was happening in the world. Around 1991 also, there was a switch. We focused on our neighborhood, so there came the Look East policy, etc.
91, what happened?
So, ma'am, 91 was the year of the disintegration of the USSR. Also, the point where we also went for economic reforms in our country. And thereafter, a major change in our foreign policy has also come up in 2014, where we took up the policies of neighborhood first, and the Look East policy was then converted to a more proactive Act East policy. Ma'am, that is my understanding of it.
No, we've always, had a neighborhood policy. We've always been very close with our neighbors. We've always, in 71, we helped out Bangladesh. We've always been looking. So that was not a major shift in 2014. But yeah, over the years, these are the main things, non-aligned, and it suited the current, the then sort of geopolitical environment was such that was the best policy. And so we've continued, the underlying continuity has been national interest, self-interest.
Yes, ma'am.
Right? And so now, what do you think about the current foreign policy approach of the government?
It seems to be
in terms of the Ukraine war, in terms of everything in general. Give me a little bit.
Ma'am, it seems to be very proactive in my opinion. Also, we are focusing on India first as a policy. So, like for example, as you've mentioned, the Ukraine war. So there was a lot of pressure on us to take a stance against one or the other. But India has toed a line where they've talked about looking for a diplomatic issue, this thing. Mostly because India is looking for their own interests, because we cannot shun our partnership with Russia on an issue. Ma'am, we have a very robust partnership with Russia. We have ties with regard to defense. We are also importing a lot of oil from them. During the Cold War era also, we have a slightly more friendly relationship with Russia more than the USA at that point of time.
No, it was not Russia at that time. It was not Russia at that time, the Soviet Union.
Thank you for correcting me. The USSR at that point of time. And so in that regard, as a country, we value what we have with our global partners. And as such, it's not an easy decision to ditch a partner as such. And main idea for us is that even if we are looking for our interest, that like if we are buying cheap oil, and there's an accusation that comes from Ukraine also, that maybe there should be sanctions against India for buying cheap oil. But the idea is, as the External Affairs Minister has also pointed out multiple times, that we have to look at the interest of our people. Our country is not the per capita income of our country is not very high as comparable to the European nations, etc. So for us, it is important that we look for the best deals per se. But at the same time, we are not giving up on the ideas. We are not.
What has been our general sort of view on the Ukraine war?
Ma'am, the general position that we have focused on is a dialogue-based solution to the problem. We are not in favor of skirmishes that the way it's happening right now. Our steadfast advice has always been towards dialogue to both nations as such.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay, Pallavi.
Good morning, ma'am.
Morning. Tell me, have you heard of Operation Dost?
Yes, ma'am.
What's it?
So, ma'am, unfortunately, Turkey and Syria have recently witnessed a devastating earthquake. And Operation Dost is India's response to give aid to the countries. The aid basically includes personnel from the NDRF, medical aid as well. We're sending dog squads, etc., which help in search and rescue. We're also sending advanced drilling equipments, etc.
Okay, very nice. And Arogya Maitri?
Ma'am, Arogya Maitri was initiative that the government of India has started, which is aimed at helping out other countries with regard to pharmaceuticals and medicines, vaccines, etc. Especially in the post-COVID era, where more and more need has been seen, and India has emerged as a major player throughout. It is the pharmacy of the world, as we know. So that is the aim.
Okay, is it the same as Vaccine Maitri or is it different?
Ma'am, from what I know, it was recently announced. So Vaccine Maitri was something that we were doing particularly during COVID time. This is something, if I'm not wrong, was announced in January. So maybe a continuation of that.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, let's talk, about, there was a talk of disinvestment recently, yes? Any idea which companies?
Ma'am, disinvestment talks major name that comes to mind is Air India. There was
what's happened is gone. Something which was planned to be disinvested. It was also announced in the 22 budget.
Ma'am, I think it was the LIC. That is what comes to mind. Ma'am, I cannot recall. I'm
Any
sorry.
bank? You remember?
No, ma'am, I can't recall.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, they have been, in the current budget, they have proposed some changes to the Banking Act because, to facilitate the privatization. Any idea?
Ma'am, I cannot recall.
No? Okay, all right, fair enough.
I apologize.
No. Okay, let's again come back to your, first interest, foreign service. So, you heard about the Chinese balloon, yeah?
Yes, ma'am.
So, do you think, this US response was like using a hammer to kill a fly?
Ma'am, that is what the Chinese have basically said. But if the claims of US are right and it was a mass surveillance mission, then they were all, the Chinese were then looking at conducting mass surveillance over the territory of multiple countries, not just the USA. I've heard even the India, Vietnam, etc. were also part of the mass surveillance system. And per se, I don't see how they thought it was fair on their part to do something like that. Maybe an action was necessary. The USA has taken that action. That is a issue then between them, I suppose. But maybe because it was an underhanded thing that they had done, and every country is very protective of their sovereignty.
Over India also?
Ma'am, from what I know, in 2020 they have in Port Blair, if I'm not wrong. We didn't. There is no news as to what action India had taken at that point of time. It wasn't as drastic as what US has done.
Fair enough. Okay.
Yes,
and let's ask you something about the budget. Did you follow the budget?
Yes, ma'am.
So, what are the sources of revenue for government of India?
Ma'am, the major sources were loan, followed by GST, then followed by corporate and income tax at the same level. Yes, ma'am, and I can't remember the other
we just talked about it, no? We just spoke about another source.
Ma'am.
Okay, let's talk about capital receipt. Okay, where does it come from?
Ma'am, a lot of it comes from our the taxes. Taxes are
no capital receipt. Capital receipt is the sale of an asset. Okay.
Yes,
So what
Disinvestment.
we just spoke about selling of the assets, no?
Yes, ma'am.
Disinvestment का बात किया था. So company से dividends also come,
Yes,
right?
ma'am.
So that's also a source of revenue.
Yes, ma'am.
And okay, out of the expenses, right? Leave the defense expenditure alone. Where do you think the government had laid special emphasis on?
Ma'am, as a whole, a lot of money was spent on the century-sponsored scheme when the century sector schemes defense was, as you've mentioned, a part of it. We have also worked towards a little bit more capital expenditure. That was the idea. The major chunk was
What
also
was the capital
going towards.
expenditure outlay?
Ma'am, I cannot recall the exact figure.
No,
I
ma'am.
apologize.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
What is your weakness?
So I tend to be a little overcritical. That would be one, and the other would be, for now, that I feel a little nervous. So that is like throwing me off my game. So that would be another.
4 principles in your life.
Principles in my life, sir. Per se, I would say I would like to make a plan. So working towards a plan, that is one thing. So plan the work the plan. That is something for me. Another would be whatever happens for good. So not to be bogged down by things that happen. This thing, and I also work on the principle of what's the worst that can happen. And that kind of gives me the confidence to like go ahead and do something, because I think of the worst thing that can happen. I evaluate how it will impact my life, whether that is the impact I can live with. And if it is, then I'm fine with it. So these are the three that I live by.
रूरल डेवलपमेंट को एक लाइन में बताइए.
So rural development is something that we should be aiming towards. That is where the maximum of our population is, 63%, if I'm not wrong. And that should be at the helm of direction where we should be spending a lot of our time and energy.
सपोज करिए आपका इंडियन फॉरेन सर्विस में सिलेक्शन हो जाता है, तो आप इंडियन करेंसी को हॉट करेंसी बनाने के लिए क्या करोगे?
So there's talks about using rupee for trade with other countries. So that is aiming towards reducing the dominance of dollar, so to say. We also want that we would like that our currency become a reserve currency. For that, more and more transactions should happen. So in the Indian currency, the first step would be in our bilateral relations, where we could start off.
पाकिस्तान की पोजीशन की जगह अगर अफगानिस्तान होता, तो जियो पॉलिटिक्स में भारत का क्या रोल होता?
So, given the relations that we have as of now, if that were the case and there was no Pakistan in between, we would have had a more important role, so to say. We've done a lot of, we work towards the people of the country. We have a friendly relationship with that country as such. Maybe we could have helped a little in the interventions that have happened. But I think as such, the decision to not send the troops into the country would have been a wise decision even in that regard. And if that were the case, we could have had maybe a better relations with the country.
आप अभी सिविल जज के पद पर हैं, जज और मजिस्ट्रेट में क्या डिफरेंस?
Sir, civil judge deals with the civil sides of cases. The judicial magistrate is when you're conducting criminal trials in a court. So that will be the major difference. Nomenclature magistrate comes from the CRPC, and the CPC gives you is talking about the civil judge per se. But the word civil judge is not mentioned in the CPC. I would like to add.
बिम्स्टेक में भारत का क्या रोल है?
Sir, that is a grouping that we are hoping for better connectivity in our neighborhood. India is a leader in that regard. It was something that we envisioned to create a environment where all our partners in the grouping could grow together.
आप क्या रिलीजियस पर्सन हैं?
To an extent, sir, yes. Thank you, sir. you, sir.
Okay, Pallavi,
Yes,
your
sir.
formal interview is over. How do you assess yourself today?
So I felt I was a little low on spirits today. Uh, I don't know. I'm not very happy today, as of
No,
now.
I think as far as the spirits are concerned, you were much better than last time.
Yes.
You've improved substantially
Yes.
since in the last 1 week.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Those spirits were very high at that
Yes.
time. Too much,
Yes, sir.
you know.
Too voluble.
You are now at the perfect level. So
Thank you,
it
sir.
doesn't. You improved quite a lot.
Yes, sir.
One thing which needs to be taken care of is that since law is your subject and your first choice is foreign service, you need to improve your knowledge about these two subjects. For example, I asked you about the latest IT rules. You need to be a little more specific. अगर आप there are 4-5 months में 4-5 acts गवर्नमेंट ने बनाए हैं, नए rules बनाए हैं, acts. OTT platforms के लिए rules are different. IT Act के अंदर जो rules हैं, they are different. They are punishable. Then digital competition law के
Yes,
बारे में
sir.
there's a draft rules.
Yes.
इसका specifics जाओ. Do not, if you are asked to explain in one line, don't go and speak 10 or 20 sentences about it.
Yes, sir.
Come to the crux. So उसके ऊपर आपको practice करनी पड़ेगी.
Yes, sir.
There are not too many subjects. Just read these 5-6 topics and practice before a mirror. You will be able to come to the crux of each thing very
Yes.
fast. Similarly with the foreign service thing, and similarly with what Mr. Sharma asked you about, the
Rural development.
rural development. Instead of beating around the bush, you could have said one sentence.
Yes, sir.
So here you need to practice in the mirror, and you don't need to go to a plan B after that. You are able to do that. Okay.
Hopefully.
So you are much better now and much practice. When is your scheduled interview scheduled?
Sir, it's on 27th of February.
Okay, so still there's plenty of time.
Yes, sir.
There are not too many questions are available on the space to the panel members. अगर आप खुद गेस करना शुरू करोगे क्या क्या क्वेश्चन है, you will be able to make out के
Yes,
कोई
sir.
25-30 क्वेश्चन हैं, मिरर के सामने उनका क्रक्स प्रैक्टिस करो, and you're through.
Okay. Thank you.
Just write them down, just another suggestion, just write them down, all the possible subjects and questions that could come, and write points in front.
Yes,
So,
sir.
so that you can recall when anything is asked on any of these subjects. So only because you're appearing for the foreign service, there are a lot of things which might be asked, even because it's foreign policy is based on internal conditions, on the domestic policy, on domestic these things as well. A lot of it is determined by how the domestic conditions are. So little bit of both you'll have to keep in mind. For instance, what is our economic situation, budget, all these things are important, and investments, ease of doing business. We didn't ask you those questions, but ease of doing business
Yes,
is
ma'am.
related to both within the government and to the foreign service.
Yes, ma'am.
Economic diplomacy,
Yes.
inviting people, encouraging foreign investment in the country. Disinvestment is also related in a way. So all these things, just focus your mind a little bit,
Yes,
a
ma'am.
little more, and write down the points, and then practice, as Sir said. Just write, just say it out.
Yes.
And I think you're nodding a little bit too much. Try not nod so much when you're speaking.
Yes, ma'am.
It detracts. It's okay. It's showing you're comfortable or you're nervous, one of the two.
Yeah.
So just try and see if you can sit a little more still. Shaking too much is not very, and you use the word ditch. We don't ditch our friends. Don't use this language normally, not
Yes, ma'am.
encouraged. All right. In
Yes, ma'am.
casual talk, you say it, but we would rather use the term don't let down our friends, or something of that kind.
Yes, ma'am.
Don't use this. It sounded a little jarring. So avoid.
Pallavi,
You can do much better.
are
Thank
you
you, ma'am.
emotional today?
No, ma'am. I actually just gave an interview, and they told me there's a slot open, so it's like 2 interviews
Okay.
back to back. So,
Okay.
and I had a coughing bout, so I'm like a little low because of that.
You were clasping your hands very tight, so I felt you were a little tense.
I was like because I don't know why, but I was a little. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Take a deep breath.
So take it easy, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Because these are experienced people, no? They can make out very quickly as to how you're feeling,
Yes, ma'am.
and so don't allow. You're a judge after all. Don't allow your emotion to rule you.
Yes,
Yeah?
ma'am.
And it shouldn't come on your face. You should have a very poker face that way. So smile.
ma'am.
That's very good, and be serious. That's when it's required to be serious. You have to be serious when required to smile. You smile. See, you
Yes,
knew about Operation Those, which is such a recent thing, which is quite creditable, I would say. You know, a lot of people may not know. It's so
Yes, ma'am.
recent, right? And you'd read up on it, so that's good. Again, disinvestment, etc. Thoda budget. You know, after all,
Yes, ma'am.
IAS is also your preference. So,
Yes, ma'am.
and this is something which kind of
Yes, ma'am.
impacts the country. So do read up on it.
Yes, ma'am.
Read Mint, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Read, just go on Mint and past few 10
Yes,
दिन का
ma'am.
पुराना आप पढ़ोगे
Yes,
तो आपको you'll get a good handle on what's going on, right?
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, I also got, you know, to know about these Banking Regulation Act and all may change. So they were planning to disinvest IDBI, but because of these, you know, they're holding back because so
ma'am.
that changes. So उतना कर लीजिएगा, बाकी आपको अपनी एरिया का ठीक है, you know, you're coming out as a sensible girl. This is your first interview with UPSC or second?
This is my first, ma'am.
First.
Yes, ma'am.
I hope you get through. Okay, I wish you
Thank
all
you,
the
ma'am.
best.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, take care.